module, which is the Intro to Stanislavski module, which means they have been working very hard the entire semester to learn about acting, but from Stanislavski's point of view. I don't know whether you guys get to know anything about him, but basically Stanislavski is the guy that came up with the more naturalistic things. He's like the father of modern theatre. Okay, so today the show that they're going to do is by Henrik Ibsen, which is Norway, a playwright from Norway, who wrote, I almost got it wrong that time, I was like, wrong one. A playwright from Norway who is writing about this woman who is going through a very sheltered life, and then she begins to realize that her husband and their marriage is a sham. Okay, so we'll be presenting 3 scenes from A Doll's House. Okay, the first one that you're gonna watch now is, can I have the 3 Noras raise up their hands? So these 3 people will be playing Nora in the different scenes, and can I have the 2 Krogsteads, please? Hey, so there'll be 2 people playing Krogsteads in some of the scenes. Now, in this first scene that you're going to watch, what's going to happen is that we are going to see the antagonist, Krogstead, come in to try and blackmail Nora for something that she wants. Now, remember, this is their first time sort of putting up something like this, so it's really great that you guys are here to support them. Thank you very much. Okay, each scene is pretty short, and the whole thing will probably take less than 20 minutes. So let's move on to the first scene. And whenever you are ready.
Listen to me, Mrs. Helmer. If necessary, I am prepared to fight for my small post in the bank as if I were fighting for my life.
So it seems.
It is not only for the sake of the money. Indeed, that weighs least with me in the matter. There is another reason. Well, I may as well tell you. My position is this. I dare say you know, like everybody else, that once, many years ago, I was guilty of an indiscretion.
I think I have heard something of the kind.
The matter never came into court, but every way seemed to be closed to me after that. So I turned to the business that you know of, and I had to do something. And honestly, I don't think I've been one of the worst. But now I must cut myself free from all that. My sons are growing up. For their sake, I must try and win back as much respect as I can in this town. The small post at the bank was like the first step up for me. And now, your husband is going to kick me downstairs again into the mud.
But you must believe me, Mr. Krogstead. It is not in my power to help you at all.
And it is because you haven't the will. But I have the means to compel you.
You don't mean you will tell my husband that I owe you money?
Suppose I were to tell him?
That would be perfectly infamous of you! To think of his learning my secret would just be my joy and pride in such an ugly, clumsy way that he should learn it from you. And that would put me in a horribly disagreeable position.
Only disagreeable?
Well, do it then! And it will be the worst for you. My husband will see for himself what a blackguard you are. You certainly won't keep your post then.
I asked you if it was only a disagreeable sin I hope that you were afraid of.
If my husband does get to know of it, of course he'll pay what is still owed. And we shall have nothing more to do with you.
Listen to me, Mrs. Helmer. Either you have a very bad memory or know very little of business. I shall be obliged to remind you of a few details.
What do you mean?
When your husband was ill, he came to me to borrow £250.
I didn't know anyone else to go to.
I promised to get you that amount.
And you did so.
I promised to get you that amount on certain conditions. And mine was so taken up with your husband's illness. And you were so anxious to get the money for your journey that you seem to have paid no attention to the conditions of our bargain. Therefore, it will not be amiss if I were to remind you of them. Now, I promise to get the money on the security of a bond which I drew up.
Yes, in which I signed.
Good. Under your signature, there were a few lines constituting your father or surety for the money. Those lines your father should have signed.
Should. He did sign them.
I had left the date blank. That is to say, your father should himself have inserted the date on which he signed the paper. Do you remember Then I gave you the bond to send by post to your father. Is that not so?
Yes.
And you naturally did so at once. Because 5 or 6 days afterwards, you brought me the bond of your father's signature. And then I gave you the money.
Well, haven't I been paying off regularly?
Probably so, yes. But to come back to the matter in hand. That must have been a very trying time for you, Mrs. Helmer.
It wasn't.
Your father was very ill, wasn't he?
It was very much near his end.
And died soon afterwards.
Yes.
Tell me, Mrs. Helmer, can you by any chance remember what day your father died? Or what day of the month, I mean?
Papa died on the 29th of September.
That is correct. I have ascertained it myself. And as that is so, there is a discrepancy which I cannot account for.
What discrepancy? I don't know.
The discrepancy consists, Mrs. Helmer, in the fact that your father signed this bond 3 days after his death.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
Your father died on the 29th of September. I'll look here. Father has written his signature the 2nd of October. It is a discrepancy, isn't it? Can you explain it to me? It is a remarkable thing, too, that your father, that the words 2nd of October as well as the year were not written in your father's handwriting. But the one that I think I know. Well, of course it can be explained. Your father may have forgotten to date his signature and someone else may have dated it haphazard before they knew of his death. There is no harm in that. It all depends on the signature of the name. And that is genuine, I suppose, Mrs. Helmer? It was your father himself who wrote his name here?
No. It was not. It was I that wrote Papa's name.
Are you aware that is dangerous confession?
In what way? You shall have your money soon.
Let me ask you a question. Why did you not send this paper to your father?
It was impossible. Papa was so ill. And when he was so ill himself, if I had sent him that signature, I should have had to tell him what the money was to be used for. And when he was so ill himself, I couldn't tell him that my husband's life was in danger. It was just impossible.
It would have been better for you if you had given up your trip abroad.
No, that was impossible. That trip was to save my husband's life. I couldn't give that up.
But did it never occur to you that you were committing a fraud on me?
Couldn't take that into account. I didn't trouble myself about you at all. I couldn't bear you because you put so many heartless difficulties in my way, although you knew what a dangerous condition my husband was in.
Mrs. Helmer, you evidently do not realize clearly what it is that you have been guilty of. But I can assure you that my one false step which lost me all my reputation was nothing more or nothing worse than what you have done.
You asked me to believe that you were brave enough to run a risk to save your wife's life?
The law cares nothing about motive.
Then it must be a very foolish law.
Foolish or not, it is the law by which you will be judged if I produce this paper in court.
I don't believe it. Is a daughter not to be allowed to spare her dying father anxiety and care? Is a wife not to be allowed to save her husband's life? I know not much about law, but I'm certain there must be laws permitting such things as that. Have you no knowledge of such laws? You, who are a lawyer? Well, you must be a very poor lawyer, Mr. Krogstead.
Maybe. For matters of business, such business you and I have had together. Do you think I don't understand that? Very well. Do as you please, but let me tell you this. If I lose my position a second time, you shall lose yours along with me.
Krogstead was trying to blackmail her to get his job back at the bank, okay? So this second scene is, I think after Christmas, when her friend comes to visit her. And this is a friend who is a widow and has had to work her way, trying to earn money by herself, okay? And this time around, what happens is that she's come to visit her again after everything has happened and people have been blackmailed, right? And May I know what's happening? People coming in? Okay, hold on. Oh, they want to capo, is it? Pastor, come in, no taps. Yeah, and so what happens is her friend confronts her about who is actually the one that lent her the money. Hi guys, can we be quick? Alright, and this will be the second group. We wait for people to settle down.
Sorry.
Take a breath. Release. And second seat.
It's you, Christine. There's no one else out there, is there? How good of you to come. I heard you are asking for me. Yes, I was passing by. As a matter of fact, it is something you could help me with. Let's sit down here on the sofa. Look, tomorrow evening, there's to be a fancy dress ball at the Sandbox with above us. And Tobo wants me to go as the Neapolitan fisher girl and dance the tarantella that I learned at Capri. I see. You're going to keep up the character. Yes, Tobo wants me to. Look. Here's the dress. Tobo had it made for me there. But now, it is also torn, and I haven't any idea. You will easily put that right. It is only some of the trimming come and sewing here and there. Needle and thread? Now then, that's all we want. It is so nice of you. So, you are going to be dressed up tomorrow, Nora. Let me tell you what. I shall come in for a moment to see you in your fine feathers. But I've completely forgotten to thank you for a delightful evening yesterday. Well, I don't think yesterday was as pleasant as usual. You ought to have come to town a little earlier, Christine. Certainly, Tomo does understand how to make a house dainty and attractive. And so do you, it seems to me. You are not your father's daughter for nothing. But tell me, is Dr. Rank always as depressed as he was yesterday?
Oh, yesterday it was very noticeable. I must tell you that he suffers from a very dangerous disease. He has consumption of the spine. Poor creature. His father was a horrible man who committed all sorts of excesses, and that is why he's so sickly from childhood. Do you understand?
But, my dearest Nora, how do you know anything about such things?
When you have 3 children, you get visits now and then from married women who know something of medical matters, and they talk about one thing and another.
Does Dr. Rank come here every day?
Yes, every day regularly. He's Tomo's most intimate friend and a great friend of mine too. He's just like one of the family.
But tell me this, is he perfectly sincere? I mean, isn't he the kind of man that is very anxious to make himself agreeable?
Not in the least. What makes you think that?
Well, when you introduced him to me yesterday, he mentioned that he had often heard my name declared in his house. But afterwards, your husband hadn't the slightest idea who I was. So how could Dr. Rank?
That is quite right, Christine. Tomo was so absurdly fond of me that he wants me absolutely to himself, as he says. At first, he seemed almost jealous if I mentioned any of the dear folk at home. So naturally, I gave up doing so. But I often talk about such things with Dr. Rank because he likes hearing about them.
Listen to me, Nora. You're still like a child in many ways, and I'm older than you and have a little more experience. Let me tell you this. You must make an end of it with Dr. Rank.
What ought I to make an end of?
Of 2 things, I think. Yesterday you mentioned some nonsense about a rich admirer who was to lend you money.
An admirer who doesn't exist, unfortunately. But what then?
Is Dr. Rank a man of means?
Yes, he is.
And has no one to provide for?
No one. But
And comes here every day?
yes, I told you so.
But how could this well-bred man be so tactless?
I don't understand you at all.
Don't prevaricate, Nora. Do you suppose I don't guess who lent you the 250 pounds?
Are you out of your senses? How can you think of such a thing? A friend of ours who comes here every day. Do you realize what a horribly painful position that would be?
Then it really isn't he?
No, certainly not. It would never have entered into my head for a moment. Besides, he had no money to lend then. He came into his money afterwards.
Well, I suppose that was lucky for you, my dear Nora.
No, it would never have come into my head to ask about the ring. Although, I'm quite sure that if I had asked him,
But of course you wouldn't.
of course not. There's no reason for me to think it could possibly be necessary. But I'm quite sure that if I told Dr. Ring,
Behind your husband's back?
I must make an end of it with the other one. And that will be behind his back too. I must make an end of it with him.
Yes, that is what I told you yesterday, but
A man can put a thing like that straight much easier than a woman.
one's husband, yes.
Nonsense. When you pay off the debt, you get your bond back, don't you?
Yes, as a matter of course.
And can tear it into 100,000 pieces and burn it up, that nasty, dirty paper.
Nora, you're concealing something from me.
Do I look as if I were?
Something has happened to you since yesterday morning. Nora, what is it?
Christine? Hush, there's Tomo come home. Do you mind going to the showroom for the present? Tomo can't bear to see dressmaking going on. Let Anne help you.
Certainly, but I will not be going away from here until we have had it out with one another.
And thank you. Alright, you guys need to go off after you stay for the last one. It's about 6 minutes. Can I? Okay, so this last one, right? What we've just seen actually is she almost telling the secret to her friend, but hasn't happened yet. What we're going to see now, the next scene, is the scene where the antagonist comes back again to ask and blackmail her even further because he had just found out he was sacked from his job. So this is his last resort. He has to come back and get her to do exactly what she wants. Okay? Are we all good? Ready to go? Okay, hold on for a moment. So this is the point where we literally, at the very end, after he goes off, what happens is he's going to put a letter into the letterbox telling the husband of what she has done, which is to have borrowed illegally from him. Okay? Clear? Okay, go. Alright, in your own time.
Speak about my husband's at home. No matter about that. What do you want of me? An explanation of something? Make haste then, what is it? You know, I suppose, that I've got my dismissal. I couldn't prevent it, Mr. Krogstead. I fought as hard as I could. Does your husband love you so little then? He knows what I can expose you to, and yet he ventures. How can you suppose he has any knowledge of the sort? I don't suppose so at all. It would not be the least like our dear Torvald Helmer to show so much courage. Mr. Krogstead, a little respect for my husband, please. Certainly. All the respect he deserves. But since you have kept the matter so carefully to yourself, I make bold to assume you have a little clearer idea than you had yesterday of what it actually is that you have done. More than you could ever teach me. Such a bad lawyer as I am. What is it you want of me? Only to see how you were, Mrs. Helmer. I've been thinking about you all day long. A mere cashier, a quill driver, a man like me. Even he has a little of what is called feeling, you know? Show it then. Think of my little children. Have you and your husband thought of mine? Never mind about that. I only wanted to tell you that you need not take this matter too seriously. In the first place, there be no accusation made on my part. No, of course not. I was sure of that. The whole thing can be arranged amicably. There is no reason why anyone should have any knowledge about it. It shall remain a secret between us three. My husband would never get to know anything about it. And how will you be able to prevent it? Am I to understand that you can pay the balance that is owing? No, not just at present. Or perhaps you have another expedient of raising the money soon. No expedient I mean to make use of. Well, in any case, if you stood there with ever so much money in your hand,
I would never part with your bond.
Tell me what purpose you mean to put it to.
I shall only preserve it, keep it in my possession. No one who is not concerned in the matter shall have the slightest hint of it. So if the thought of it has driven you to any desperate resolution,
It has.
if you had it in your mind to run away from home,
I have.
or something worse,
How could you know that?
give up the idea.
How could you know I had thought of that?
Everyone thinks of that at first. I did too. But I hadn't the courage.
No more had I.
Well, that's it, isn't it? You hadn't the courage either.
No, I haven't. I haven't.
Besides, it would have been a great piece of folly. Once the first storm at home is over, I have a letter for your husband in my pocket,
Telling him everything?
in as lenient manner as I possibly
He mustn't
could.
get the letter. Take it out.
Excuse me, Mrs. Helmer, but I think I told you just now.
I'm not speaking of what I owe you. Tell me what sum you're asking my husband for, and I will get the money.
I'm not asking your husband for a penny.
What do you want then?
I will tell you. I want to rehabilitate myself, Mrs. Helmer. I want to get on. Your husband must help me. For the last year and a half, I have not had a hand in anything dishonorable. I have been struggling in the most restrictive circumstances. I was content on working my way up, step by step, but now I'm all turned out, and I'm no longer going to be satisfied with merely being taken into favor again. I want to get on. I want to get back into the bank again, in a higher position. Your husband must make place for me.
That he will never do.
He will. I know him. He dare not protest. Within a year, then you will see. It'll be Nils Krogstead, not Torvald Helmer who manages the bank.
That is the thing you'll never see.
Does that mean you will?
I have courage enough for it now.
Oh, you can't frighten me. A fine, spoilt lady like you.
You will see. You will see.
Under the ice, perhaps? Under the cold, black water. And then in the spring to float up to the surface, all horrible and unrecognizable, with your hair fallen out.
You can't frighten me.
Nor you me. People don't do such things, Mrs. Helmer. Besides, what use would it be? I shall have him in my power all the same.
Afterwards, when I'm
Have
no
you
longer-
forgotten that it is I who has the keeping of your reputation? Well, now I have warned you. Do not do anything foolish. When Helmer has had my letter, I shall expect a message from him. Goodbye, Mrs. Helmer.
He is going. He's not putting the letter in the box. Oh, no, that's impossible. What is that? He's standing outside. He's not going downstairs. Is he hesitating? Can he? In the letterbox. There it lies. Torvald. There's no hope for us now.
And end. Yay!
Okay, so that was the entire presentation. Thanks so much, guys, for being a part of it and for helping them also.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks, guys. Thank you. Have a good